All right, good evening, everybody, or nobody. All right. So let's go live. We're going to live here tonight. Like you can see, I put this, our healthcare philosophy is continuing to feed diseases and diagnoses. If you look at the statistics around healthcare, if you want to call it healthcare, it's more about disease management and sick care. That you have more disease than we ever have in history. Okay. So we have more people with diagnosis, symptoms, problems than ever in history, and we keep approaching health the same way over and over again, expecting a different result, which is the definition of insanity. If you go back to Einstein, it's the definition of insanity in our healthcare quotation marks system is definitely that. And so we have these foundational issues that we've been pretty much programmed and conditioned to believe when it comes to approaching our health. And I did the same thing at one point in my life, and I definitely suffered from having a problem as well. I was disabled at 19 years old and couldn't walk, and I was a scholarship football player at the time, and it happened after picking up a chair. And so my body broke, and it didn't seem to make any sense. But it really started to wake me up about how we were approaching health poorly. And my wife got really sick in 2014, and she had a very dangerous condition that nobody in healthcare, nobody in our traditional medical care was even coming close to. They just what it really showed is that it's so much about finding a diagnosis and treating the diagnosis, calling the diagnosis the cause of the problem. And here's the big scoop, guys, is that no diagnosis is the cause of the problem. It's just the name to a group of symptoms. Okay, and it makes sense that we have to classify things and organize things, but a big flaw in our system is blaming the diagnosis or the symptom as the cause. And it's really not true. It's your body adapting to some stressor. And for my wife, she had a major rash all over her body that was extremely itchy, definitely looking like an autoimmune problem. And we went to doctor to doctor to doctor in the medical system, and they just wanted to treat her skin with steroids and creams, and ran lab testing that was looking for autoimmune things. But at the same time, they came back normal. Okay. They came back within normal limits. And so they couldn't find anything that was wrong. And bottom line, long story short, on her story is that we went through a lot of different things and found functional medicine. And some of you still aren't familiar with functional medicine. And what functional medicine is it's root cause medicine. It's about testing and analyzing the body to find out why it's reacting the way that it is. Because the thing is that your symptoms that you may or may not have, or you may have in the future, are your body adapting to something, and it's doing it for the right reasons. To make that sound a little bit more true, is that if I hit my head on my desk right here and split my head open, that's not the cause of the problem, and I don't care what you name it. Okay? I don't care what the diagnosis is. That is not the cause of the problem. That is a result of me hitting my head on my table. And you get an opportunity at that time to blame that and then just treat it with medicine or even something natural for that matter, because a lot of people, unfortunately, are making the same mistake with natural stuff of where they're just trying to treat symptoms and conditions with natural things and not really finding the root cause. And so, you're hitting your head and you're creating a symptom, and that symptom is not the cause of the problem. I don't care what you name it. What you got to find out is, in this case, is like, how are you hitting your head? Because it's not that obvious, obviously, when you're looking at other symptoms and symptoms, conditions, and diagnoses in the body. And especially this platform or this philosophy that we've been giving, that the symptom or the diagnosis is the cause of the problem, and it's just not true. Okay, we've got to get past this point. And so the philosophy is off from the beginning, is that the body's reacting to something, and you got to find out what it's reacting to. Don't just treat the symptoms of the reaction and or blame the symptoms of the reaction. Okay. And so, bottom line, long story short, for Victoria, my wife, is that we eventually found that she had mold toxicity, and mold toxicity is way more common than you might think. And it's really it comes back to being an immune system issue that you can be, that she showed up with immune system problems, and it started to be established when she was born. She was a cesarean birth. She wasn't breastfed long enough. She was given full rounds of vaccines. She didn't necessarily adapt to those very well. Then also, she started to have ear infections and allergies as a young kid, and this just kept progressing. And A lot of times we just take the symptoms and conditions again for what they are, and we treat them, and antibiotics, and get tubes put in the ears, get tonsils removed. Thank God she didn't get her tonsils removed, because it is part of your immune system. But she did do rounds of antibiotics, and that actually will wreak havoc on your gut. Your gut has a ton of bacteria in it, and so when you take antibiotics, it can destroy that microbiome, is what it's called. But the point here is that in the medical system, that would have never came up. They would have waited until those autoimmune symptoms or labs would have came back positive, and now they'd have been like, oh, the reason that you have this is because you have lupus, or the reason you have this is because you have multiple sclerosis, or some other autoimmune condition, and they would blame that. But see, the point here is that if you can't find the symptoms either way, and they're not going to ever get to the root cause, and it's just going to keep getting worse. It's just like anything else that's natural. If you don't address the problem, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. And you can think of a garden and plants. If you don't water plants, put them in the sun, take care of the soil, those plants are going to wilt. And that is not the body. That's not the plant doing the wrong thing. You're neglecting it. You're stressing it. And so it's just not getting what it needs. And so it's wilting. And you can't blame that problem on age and genes like we do a lot of times with our healthcare system again. So let's come back around here, and really quickly tonight, let's make sure and understand, okay, we got these fundamental flaws in our healthcare, what we call healthcare system, but it really is crisis, disease care, management of symptoms, and modification of symptoms with pharmaceuticals most of the time. And just because you take a pharmaceutical and let's say your blood pressure goes to the normal limits, doesn't mean you've gotten to the root cause, right? You're managing those symptoms. If you take the blood pressure medication back out, that blood pressure will go back up. And so it really shows you that you aren't getting to the cause of the problem. And, for that matter too, is if you have high blood pressure, think about this. If I can hit your big toe with a hammer, create some stress response, and your blood pressure can go up. You can drink caffeine and your blood pressure can go up. You can stress out because of work and relationships and finances and all those things, and your blood pressure can go up. None of that is a heart problem. Okay, that is your body adapting to something. Okay, and so it's a good lesson to learn that the body's just adapting to things, and we've got to find out what it is. And so there's a finite list, meaning there's a limited list of things that will actually really trigger the body, and that is physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. And there is a list of things underneath each one of those categories that you do need to investigate. But it's really a finite list that you can come back to and distill down to that is at the roots of every disease, diagnosis, symptom, problem you've ever heard of. And unfortunately, I might be the first doctor who actually told you that. And so we've got to really understand that we've got a huge problem, right? We've got a problem. And I think most people, there's a lot of people, at least I talk to patients every day, and they say the same thing, because the majority of my patients have been through all the medical stuff, and they realize that it's not getting to the root cause. They're very frustrated. They're tired of taking medications. They don't necessarily blame the doctors. They really hate the system. They really don't like pharmaceutical companies. They feel like they're in it just for the money. And I think that there's a lot of reasons to validate why they would feel that way. But it's all a broken system that we put an umbrella term over called healthcare, but it has nothing to do with health. It's, again, disease management and diagnosis and symptom management. And so we've got to have a very clear understanding that that's part of the problem, that just because it's called healthcare doesn't mean that it's about health. And so, so you have the fundamental flaws happening here, that we think it's healthcare, but it's not. We're seeking medical attention, but the medical attention is actually for very much more emergency care, not health. And so we've got to understand that there is a problem. We have more disease diagnosis, symptoms, problems than we ever had in history. So clearly what we're doing isn't working, but we keep applying the same principle of here, take this to treat the symptoms, blame the symptoms and the diagnosis as the cause. And it keeps just revolving door of more and more problems. And so we got to do something different. And part of what we need to do that's different is recognize that fact, right? Like, this is not healthcare. This is just disease management care and diagnosis care. And so what do we need to do that's different then is start to recognize what are we doing fundamentally that's causing this issue. And I'd say a really big one, number one, is that we're basing health off of how we look and how we feel. That as long as we look good, we feel good, we must be healthy. And that is entirely not true. Okay. Unfortunately, you can have stage 4 cancer and not feel it. And a majority of the time, a huge percentage of the time, the first sign of a heart problem is a heart attack or a stroke and potentially death. And I bring up those two scenarios because unfortunately, most of us, including myself, have been impacted, whether ourselves or somebody that we love and care about has been impacted by the heart disease and cancer. And, more people don't feel those things until the end, until it's advanced. And so, and it really hurts and takes away so many of our loved ones. And we're talking about 1 out of 2 people is what the statistics show. And so more people are really dying as diseases that we don't feel. So clearly health isn't how we look or how we feel. And then also a really good example is just because we feel bad doesn't mean that your body's broken either. I mean, I think the flu and having a fever and vomiting and diarrhea, like that's a great example of that. This is your body just fighting off bugs and reacting how it's supposed to with more temperature, which kills off bugs. Vomiting, diarrhea helps eliminate toxins out of your body. It's your body doing the right thing, but it doesn't feel good. But it's, a lot of times inconvenient for life. We have responsibilities as individuals or parents, our jobs and our work. And we can't be, we don't want to take time to deal with the symptoms. And so we treat it, like we take stuff to manage those symptoms, but that's actually interfering with your body's natural processes and actually makes us sicker in the long run. And part of this whole big problem is health is not how we look or how we feel. And there's a big thing here too, is that, most people don't look bad or feel bad until there's a lot of problem. Heart disease and cancer, big diagnoses, so many people don't even feel those until the very end. But there's usually some type of symptom that you have to have a trained eye to see and understand that the body's going to be in a progressive, there's going to be a progressive degeneration of symptoms. So like what I mean by that, for example, is like a very common pattern that I see is like kind of like my wife Victoria, where as a kid somebody gets where their cesarean birth, which isn't ideal for your immune system development as a child. They weren't breastfed long enough or at all, which is, again, not good for your microbiome in your gut, which is a huge part of where your immune system is. And then they also get a lot of toxins, including vaccines. They get a lot of toxins from food. There's a developmental issue around leaky gut, which is intestinal hyperpermeability, that we're born with a leaky gut, and these toxins are leaking in and through the gut lining and stimulating and triggering the immune system response. And so it creates a fight or flight sympathetic response, emergency response happening within the body. And part of the reason why vaccines could be a problem as well is stimulating this fight or flight response. Then, so they don't feel good. And so they start taking medicines, whether it's some type of, Miralax. You see things like Miralax coming in, antibiotics, other Tylenols, NyQuils, all of these different type, children's Tylenol. There's all of these things, these chemicals that can come in and create more issues. They manage the symptoms. The kids aren't crying as much. Maybe they're pooping better, but it's ultimately hindering and damaging their immune system for the future. And so then all of a sudden, another year goes by, and now they have ear infections and their tonsils are swelling. And so then they get their tonsils taken out, and those tonsils are part of your immune system, and they were swelling for a reason. Think of it like, I've always been an athlete, and so I've rolled my ankle a lot, or ankles, and it's like they swell up, right? When you traumatize them, they swell up. And so thank God no doctor wanted to cut off my foot just because it was swelling, right? And so you got to think of it. The body was reacting to something from the immune system, and just cutting the tonsils out is not going to help. You're actually just removing part of the immune system and the lymphatic system. So it's only going to make that immune system worse again. And so this keeps happening round and round. People get allergies, so they take a lot of allergy medications. A lot of ladies get to their period, their puberty time, and then their cycles poor, and then they start taking birth control to either manage those symptoms and or not get pregnant. And so those can also create some complications. And so it's just this vicious cycle that just keeps building, and their immune system symptoms just keep getting bigger and bigger. And it doesn't always look like immune system. It could be hormonal things. It could be energy things. It could be, digestive things. And you just don't know that it's all part of an immune system issue. And so it just keeps building until it becomes an autoimmune diagnosis and potentially even cancer. And this is a pattern that happens over and over again, but you have to be able to look at it from a different place, like functional medicine and like what I do. And guys, like education and studying and the books took me so far as understanding anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, how all of the everything works within the body. But it was my wife and her being sick, which really took it to another level because I had to help figure it out. We really couldn't find any doctors who could help us completely. Like we found some functional medicine doctors, and they were great, but there was still some limitations there. And so me already being a doctor at the time, I really dug in, and I have to say we dug in because my wife is also a nutritionist, and you can see like I mean we've been very fit people, athletes, ate really well, really took care of ourselves. I would say to the standards that we look at health, and we still got really sick and broke, and it really gave us a lot of lessons in life. And at the same time, by the time she really got sick, we knew a lot, and we applied a lot of nutrition and exercise. I mean, that was our life, but it still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to get to the root cause, and so it really helped us learn lessons. But it really gave us a situation where it's very unique, where through that test of her, it really, if you hear those stories of like, sometimes your biggest tests become your biggest testimonies. That is us for sure. And so it really led us to a huge difference in perspective of being able to see full circle how things work and be able to communicate that to people and see it from like a 30,000 foot view of like, I can just see it all. But then you can also come in and talk about the details. Like you can see the forest, but also talk about the trees. And I do that with patients all the time to help them understand because, when it comes down to it, ultimately, who's responsible for your health? You are. So who has to be the doctor? You do. So I see it as I train my patients on how to view and manage their health very differently, to understand cause versus effect in treatment versus, what is the cause and addressing the cause, understanding that your body's reacting for a reason, that your body's very intelligent and it always wants homeostasis, which is balance. And it will damage you if you don't stop triggering the problem. Now, what do I mean by that is like a great example is that if you're stuck on an iceberg and it's super cold, your body's going to take all the blood and nutrients and take it all of your vital organs, and it leaves your fingers and toes basically exposed. And if you don't get off that iceberg, your body's going to keep reacting by bringing the blood and nutrients to your organs. Now, why would it do that? Is because your organs are vital, meaning that you have to have them working to stay alive. You don't have to have fingers and toes. And so your body has these built-in mechanisms, intelligence, that will do that. It will redistribute to protect you. Your body's always trying to protect you, okay, no matter what it is. Hitting your head, stuck on an iceberg, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, mold, like mold toxicity, like autoimmune diagnoses. No matter what, your body is still trying to protect you. But if you don't know that you're on an iceberg and your body's adapting to an environment that's not, it's uninhabitable, like you can't stay there forever, that it will continue to freeze and freeze and freeze. And eventually, if you don't get off the iceberg, you will die. But what's happening, these fingers and toes will literally die in this process. That's not your body doing the wrong thing. It's just trying to adapt to this cold stress. If you can get off the iceberg into a warmer temperature, what will it do? It will stop damaging the fingers, redistribute the blood back out to those fingers and toes, and your body will move back towards normal. See, it's not your body doing the wrong thing. You're in a bad environment, and that's what physical, chemical, and emotional stressors do to our body, is make it adapt. And if you don't stop making it adapt, eventually cells and tissues and organs and systems will begin to degenerate and break down. And that's when you may feel a symptom or may get that diagnosis, because when enough cell tissue damage has occurred, now you may feel it. Now you go seek help. But there was this degenerative process that was taking place because you were continuing to stress your body over and over again. And so that's a wonderful example that you can take home, that, man, if you can just embrace that, it does apply to every disease, diagnosis, symptom, problem you've ever heard of, that your body is just trying to adapt to these stressors, and you've got to find out what the stressors are. Traditional, conventional medical testing is not going to do that for you. Conventional medical testing is about diagnosis and treatment of that diagnosis. It's not about root cause medicine. Okay. We have to establish that. And that's okay in a way. Like if you like I have no problem with this, but you have to be your own doctor to be able to see this perspective and understand it. That, if you have a heart attack right now, like listen, I want you to take as much drugs. I want the paramedics to come get you. I want them to take you to the hospital. I want them to give you as much drugs, do open heart surgery, whatever they need to do in a medical world to save your life. That is completely okay. Okay. But none of those drugs, none of that surgery actually made you healthier. It saved your life. And that's great. But you have to understand that it's not making you healthier. It doesn't make you healthier to give you drugs, but it can save your life. It doesn't make you healthier to open up your chest and do work on your heart, but it can save your life. And so hopefully you can get through that scenario and they're like, yes, we did it. Thank God we've got all this technology and these great doctors, but why did this happen? And if they're saying it's your age and genes, you're already on the wrong philosophy again. Like you cannot blame it on that if you've never known these other stressors, that these icebergs. If you're a plant that's degenerating and wilting because you haven't watered yourself, basically, so you can't blame it on that. But it's just so common that we don't know how to take care of these things that there's so many people who end up in that place. But I don't want you to I don't want you to get me wrong. Like there is a time for medical care, and that heart attack is exactly the time. Okay, we got to save your life, get you stable, but then you have to ask, why did this happen and how to rebuild your body so it doesn't happen again. And just taking drugs for the rest of your life, it's kind of like soaking down the walls, like the fire department, like if you think about the fire department and your house is on fire, kind of like soaking down the walls every single day. But your house is still rotting. You've never rebuilt it. And so you're still vulnerable. You're still in trouble. And so many people have reoccurrence of problems, right? And they just think that it's normal, but it's common, not normal. So we've got to have a different philosophy, a different understanding that health is not how we look or how we feel. If we base it off of that, eventually you're going to look bad and feel bad. There's research and science around this, is that cells and tissues usually have to degenerate from about 100% function down to about 60. And so there's about a 40% disease damage and cell death degeneration phase that has to take place before you even feel a symptom. So we've got to have some more wisdom and knowledge around this. And we got to understand that once we have that symptom and problem and diagnosis, that it's not the cause, it's your body adapting like it's supposed to, that the symptom, no matter what you name it, is not the cause of the problem. There's a reason why your body's doing this. And so if we just mask those symptoms and treat those symptoms with drugs or even something natural, then you're still not getting to the root cause because you never investigated why it happened. And so we've got to understand this timeline, this perspective in order to change the recipe, right? We've got to really change the recipe to understand how to get different results. And so if this starts to help you to break up that understanding, and to create a different philosophy. And I don't even necessarily like the word philosophy, because sometimes philosophy feels to me like a belief. And, this is not about beliefs. This is about how your body works, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, that has been established for years. We do keep learning more about it as technology goes along, which is awesome. Especially I think of what makes me excited is the microbiome in your gut. We have billions of bacteria in there, and we still have, we're still learning more and more about that every single day. And so that's exciting information. But, but we've got to understand that, this information has been around, but our perspective has been off. Our recipe's been off. We've had all the ingredients really, as far as application and what to do and gain understanding and get to the cause. But because of this, what I've been talking about tonight, of that, we base off how we look and how we feel. Once we look bad and feel bad, we treat those symptoms. We don't ever really get to the cause. We blame those symptoms and diagnosis as the cause and kind of call it good in a way. Never find the cause. And so it just keeps getting worse and worse. And we call that normal, but it's just a common approach that keeps producing poorer and poorer results. And it's sad. And it doesn't have to be this way. And so that's why I jump on here. If any of this really, resonates with you, get onto my website. You can see our story. We produced a very, a nice video that shows pictures of my wife, Victoria. And, guys, that's what now I'm always grateful because of our experience, because of what we went through, that has made the difference in me being a doctor. Okay. Like, it's not just book smart, it's experience. It took Victoria 3 years to recover, guys. And if it wasn't for a big part of our success on this was because we were athletes. And what I mean by that is, as an athlete, the philosophy, the understanding is that you can't go to the gym one time and come out looking fit, right? You can't do one practice and be at a professional level, right? So there's this progression that must take place, and that can take years. And I really reflect on that a lot when I'm working with patients, is because, of course, everybody wants to be well. They want to feel better. And it's totally understandable. And with that said, there's also natural laws and principles that you have to follow. That, think of it like farming, is that if you plant a seed, well, first of all, you got to get the soil ready. Then you plant a seed, and then you nurture that seed over and over again. Sun, soil, water, sun, soil, water, sun, soil, water, and let that plant grow. And then with enough application, enough time, you get around to the harvest. And if we can look at our bodies a lot more like plants and farming, you're actually going to be working in the right philosophy when it comes to health. Because our medical system is about treatment. And that's okay if you have a heart attack, right? It's something emergency. We need that. But that is not what health is. Health requires time and repetition. It requires a total perspective. It requires time and repetition of building and delayed gratification. I just made a post about that the other day, that delayed gratification is a necessary, absolute tool that you have to have in order to have health. You have to know that what you're doing is creating a better future. And one of the problems in actual healthcare, in the health side, has been, again, basing health off of how we look and how we feel, and not specific individualized testing that shows how your body's working, not mine, not somebody else's, how your body's working, so you get the specific individualized care that you need. Okay, how your body's adapting. And because of how it's been adapting, how have your cells and organs and systems been degenerated? And so then what do you need to do to address those causes and rebuild your health to get to the harvest? Okay, so without that specificity, you might feel better by doing natural things, which is great. I don't discount that. But eventually you're going to hit a brick wall again, because that's just how if you don't address the cause, your body will still be neglected and eventually express symptoms again. So yeah, if this resonates with you, make sure and get to the website, contact me. If you have any questions, I'd love, to help you out if you need it. We don't accept every person that comes to to the practice, but we can see if you are a good fit, if that's something that you want. Yeah, I just want to make sure that you know that door is open. This is more understanding and changing perspectives. My goal is to impact as many as I possibly can, to change the way that they view and manage their health, put their health back in their hands, help them to become their own doctors, and change our true healthcare system. And so it's a big vision, big purpose, and so that's why I'm here tonight. All right, contact me if you have any questions, and if not, I will see you sometime soon, maybe here on live again. Have a good night.